A man is dead and a woman is in hospital tonight after a fire broke out at a house in Markham.
We're going to take you live to East York, where a woman's in serious condition after being hit by a dump truck.
Plus, a Toronto police officer found guilty of interfering in a crash investigation involving her nephew appeals that decision.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. Our top story this evening, one person is dead, another is in hospital after a house fire in Markham.
For the latest details, let's go live to CP24 Sija Liu. Sija.
Lena, Bakari, we have learned that a senior man has died in this house fire and a woman has been sent to the hospital with critical injuries. This all happened around 1 p.m. on Pillar Rock Crescent, which is in the northwest corner of Victoria Square and Major Mackenzie. Early investigation would indicate that the fire started in the garage. There were a lot of flames and a car was inside, completely engulfed in flames. Take a look at the viewer video that we received that showed you just how extensive the fire was when crews arrived.
Inside the house. Her husband inside the house. Where is he? Is it in the room? Upstairs, downstairs? Downstairs? Oh, water is coming.
When firefighters arrived, there was a woman who was outside working smoke alarms, likely saved her life because she was able to evacuate. However, she did have serious injuries and was rushed to the hospital. But before she did, she was able to tell firefighters that there was still a man trapped inside. Fire crews quickly made their way inside, pulled the man out, but unfortunately, he did not survive. He died on scene before he could make it to the hospital. And crews right now do believe that the fire started in the garage. There was a vehicle inside. It quickly spread throughout the building. Take a listen to what the Markham Fire Chief Chris Nearing had to say about what they encountered when they arrived.
First in crews encountered a large volume of fire in the garage that had spread into the home. There was a resident of the home that had evacuated, been notified to the fire by a working smoke alarm. She had some critical injuries. She also reported to our crews that there was another resident of the home still inside. Crews made an aggressive interior attack, quickly located the resident, removed him to the exterior, and put him in care of York Regional Paramedic Services. Unfortunately, that resident has succumbed to the injuries and was pronounced dead at scene.
There are still a lot of questions, such as what is the origin of the fire, what caused it. Officials don't have those answers. As for the damage, it is extensive. The car that was in flames inside the garage is still in there, but it's unrecognizable. You can't tell the make or model. As for the neighbors, they've had to evacuate. They won't be able to return for the rest of the night. Officials actually brought in a shelter bus, so anyone who has had to evacuate are currently staying warm in there until further notice. So Lena and Bakari, it's still very early on in the investigation, but unfortunately we did learn that the senior man has died.
Okay, Sija Liu reporting live from Markham on this very tragic story. Thank you, Sija. And a woman is in hospital tonight with serious injuries after she was struck by a dump truck. This happened in East York.
CP24 Steve Ryan joins us live with more from the scene at Mortimer and Pape. Steve.
Yeah, Bakari and Lena, Toronto police tell us that this pedestrian struck happened at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We're on the east side of, we're on Mortimer, east of the intersection of Pape. Pape runs north and south. Mortimer is east and west. I'll get out of the way. You can see that it's still a very active investigation. A man who witnessed this entire incident said to me earlier that the dump truck was traveling northbound on Pape. The pedestrian was on the south side of Mortimer, crossing to the north side of Mortimer on a green light. He said the dump truck had a green light as well, and the dump truck made a right turn and struck the pedestrian. Now, you can see from the scene itself where all those tiny markers are, it appears as though the initial point of impact was right in the pedestrian crosswalk. So the reconstruction team is on scene right now. They will do this complete investigation. And of course, the big question is, why didn't the driver of the dump truck see the pedestrian crossing the street? Was the view obstructed? Was it driver error? Was it pedestrian error? The vehicle itself will be examined mechanically to make sure that all of the parts are working properly, and the police will make sure that the driver's view was not obstructed during this collision as well. This woman in her 40s, we are told, was transported to a trauma unit where she is fighting for her life. So the reconstruction team is on scene. This intersection here at Mortimer and Pape will be closed for some time while the police continue with their investigation. And of course, they're looking for witnesses as well. So if you were in the area at the time at around 2 p.m., you are being asked to give the police a call. I'll send it back to you guys.
Okay, reporting live in East York, CP24's crime specialist, Steve Ryan. Steve, thanks a lot. Right now, it's 5:05. Let's get a check on the evening commute with CP24's traffic specialist, Adjo and Cia. Boy, Adj, we just saw that situation in East York.
Yeah, we did. And, you know, in case you missed it, I'll go over it rather quickly. Mortimer still remains closed because of that serious collision involving a pedestrian in either direction between Pape and Woody Crest Avenue. So it's going to be there for the next several hours, as you heard Steve discussing that scene. Now, I'll show you my cameras, and that's where you're running into a few issues, problems that have been with us not as long, but are hindering the drive. So this is the 401 westbound, just as you make your way in the approach to Spadina. It is the two left lanes that are blocked with this stall, really backed up now from well before Jarvis. Headed towards the 401, westbound on the 401. It looks like my cameras just keep going in and out, but westbound 401 exit ramp to Port Union. Ramp is blocked because of a vehicle that went into the ditch. And then further west on the 401 in the Express. This is through Bayview. Stalled vehicle blocking that left lane and shoulder. And then more problems. This is the westbound 403 exit ramp that does take you to Dundas. It's a collision. It does have the left lane blocked, so drive with a little bit of extra care. On City Street's a collision on Bathurst and Fort York. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, Adjoa, thanks so much. In other news, police have identified the man fatally shot in the Moss Park area last night.
43-year-old Lyle Pono was found suffering from a gunshot wound at Queen and Shoreburn. This is last night, just after 8 o'clock. He was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries and pronounced dead a short time later. So police are searching for suspects who left the area.
A 15-year-old boy has been charged with second-degree murder after a woman was found dead in a Vaughan home this morning. Police say they were called to the home on Camino Drive in an area of Rutherford Road and Jane Street just after 9 a.m. They found a woman with critical injuries, and she was pronounced dead on scene. Police say they're not looking for any other suspects.
And Toronto police say that 10 people are facing charges following a drug bust.
Police released this image of items seized after executing a search warrant at an address and a vehicle in the area of Eglinton Avenue West and Caledonia Road on Tuesday. Police say they found fentanyl, oxycodone, crack cocaine, and a loaded firearm and ammunition. Police also searched a residence near Dufferin and Rogers Road and found ammunition and extended magazine for a Glock firearm and drug paraphernalia. Of the 10 people charged, one is 16 years old and 2 are 17.
And 2 people from Toronto are facing dozens of drug and gun charges. The OPP began the investigation into drug trafficking activity into Sudbury, Parry Sound, Manitoulin Island, which led them to execute 2 search warrants at a home and storage locker in Toronto. Well, as a result of that, 5 firearms and ammunition, 850 grams of suspected crystal meth, 750 grams of suspected fentanyl, and $100,000 in cash were seized. Anthony Eric Daly Williams and Joan Claire Deuce, they're both due back in court later this month to face charges.
A senior Toronto police officer demoted for trying to intervene in her nephew's collision investigation is appealing that ruling today.
CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us live with the latest developments. Beatrice.
Bakari, Lena, this is an appeal that was filed on Tuesday by the lawyer representing Inspector Joyce Schertzer, a veteran Toronto police officer, a couple decades on the job, most well known for her time as part of Toronto's homicide squad. Last month, a senior officer, the hearings officer, a retired OPP superintendent, is the one who imposed a 9-month demotion for Inspector Schertzer down to the rank of staff sergeant for the period of 9 months. We now know she's launched an appeal of this tribunal ruling that saw her demoted. The allegation was that she meddled into an investigation, a collision investigation involving her nephew. It was back in May 2022 that Schertzer's nephew crashed into a city-owned utility pole on Lakeshore Boulevard West. The tribunal hearing at the time that Schertzer received a call from her daughter, who also works as a police officer. At the time, Schertzer was the inspector over at 11 Division. her daughter telling her that her nephew was involved in this crash. Schertzer went in person over to the crash scene in the neighboring division in 14 Division, and the allegation was that she also dispatched one of her own subordinates from her division to also go to the scene. Schertzer's nephew was cleared to leave the collision scene about 10 minutes after talking to the officer from 11 Division, and part of the concern from the traffic services officer who took the stand at the tribunal was that police were not able to conduct, for example, if they had wanted to, a breathalyzer. There was never any charges laid or concrete allegations made that her nephew had consumed alcohol, but essentially the allegation was that her actions precluded officers from doing that test if that's something they wanted to do. So in this appeal, Schertzer's lawyer lists 67 reasons for this appeal. And here's a portion of one of those bullet points. It says the hearing officer erred in her treatment of public interest by including but not limited to making unreasonable findings, making findings without evidence, engaging in speculation, and engaging in hyperbole. The appeal also calls into question the testimony from some of the officers who did take the stand. It says that the hearings officer suggested that Schertzer's actions were not in line with what a senior police officer would do, that it caused damage to the reputation of the Toronto Police Service. And so for now, her demotion is on hold until this appeal is heard. Back to you.
All right, Beatrice Faisman reporting live from Toronto Police Headquarters tonight. Thank you, Beatrice. It is now 5:11. We're sitting right at the freezing mark, and you're watching Live at 5.
And coming up, we're going to break down the latest from the campaign trail as provincial leaders pitch their platforms. Ontario's main party leaders, they stopped in Toronto and southwestern Ontario today before two of them head north.
Yeah, and for more on what happened on the campaign trail today, we're joined live by CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. Lindsay, walk us through the highlights.
Well, it's been what is another busy day on the campaign trail for all of the main candidates here, Lena and Bakari. So we'll start with PC leader Doug Ford. He was in Waterloo today. That's where he started his day, actually, after receiving an endorsement from the Ontario Pipe Trades Council. And he had a number of things. His party really announcing a couple of different things today. A new transit plan called Go 2.0, but also talking about the party's healthcare plan as well, which includes more hospitals and connecting many more people with family doctors. As we know, family doctors the shortage of them has been a bit of an issue in Ontario over the last couple of years. Doug Ford also once again talking about the threat of U.S. tariffs too. At this event today that you're watching right now, he talked about how he would protect Ontario workers from those U.S. tariff threats. Take a listen.
With President Trump's tariffs threatening millions of workers across Ontario, we'll do whatever it takes to protect Ontario workers and their livelihoods, their families, businesses, and communities. I deeply appreciate the support of the Ontario Pipe Trades Council members, and I will work hard every single day to stand up for our women and men in the skilled trades and protect good-paying Ontario jobs.
NDP leader Marit Stiles heading to Northern Ontario today. She was in Sault Ste. Marie talking about how her party will protect renters, by which she calls real rent control, as well as doubling the ODSP. Here's more from Stiles.
I think because, conservatives like Doug Ford don't really stand up for regular people. His policies favor insiders and friends and wealthy people, and they have basically left so many people in this province really feeling the pinch, whether it's the cost of rent, which is through the roof, like all housing, or what we have to spend on groceries. In Hamilton today, I was told that 37% of people visiting food banks right now are children in Hamilton. So I think that tells you that Doug Ford isn't in it for regular people or working people. He's in it for himself.
So it seems as though rent and a shortage of family doctors, two of the main trends that a lot of these candidates have been talking about on the campaign trail today. Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, she was in Scarborough this morning announcing her new healthcare platform and also talking about how she would connect Ontarians with family doctors after that shortage we've seen over the last couple of years. Once again, also slamming Doug Ford for not fixing the healthcare issues that have been plaguing Ontario over the last couple of months. And Mike Schreiner, the Green Party leader, he was in Guelph today before heading to Hamilton to kick off a campaign event there. And he also talked about his plan to double ODSP, as well as building more housing as well. So another busy day. It's kind of hard to believe. It's a Thursday today, Lena and Bakari. 3 weeks from now, exactly, Ontarians will be heading to the polls to cast their vote. We'll have to see what happens between now and then.
Okay, well, the campaign trail wrap. Yeah, that's it. Here we go. CP24's Lindsay Biscaya live from the newsroom. Right now it's 5:16, holding at 0. This is Live at 5.
Well, just ahead, we shift from provincial to federal politics as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sits down with big city mayors. We'll tell you what they talked about. Well, the leaders of some of the country's biggest cities were in the nation's capital today to discuss the threat of American tariffs.
The Federation of Canadian Municipalities Big City Mayors Caucus met with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The organization says it wants to make sure Canada's response is informed by municipal expertise and that the Federation's involved in developing possible countermeasures.
And you are the ones closest to your communities. You know your local industries and your local business owners. And that's vital knowledge for selling Canadian resources, goods, and services, selling Canada to the rest of the world. You are indispensable members of Team Canada.
Municipalities working closely with federal and provincial governments and building up these relationships with U.S. communities is the key to weathering this storm. With commitment and hard work, we can come out even stronger and more successful than before on both sides of the border.
And Federation representatives will also be joining Premier Doug Ford on a trip to Washington next week.
Well, federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Montreal today talking about how his party would respond to tariff threats, which are already leading to job losses.
What we would do is change our procurement rules. We need to make sure that if we're spending public money, any public money, that it goes towards Canadian companies, Canadian contracts that hire Canadian workers, particularly unionized workers who are well paid. This is very important. If we spend our public money, it should go to Canadian workers, Canadian jobs.
Unifor is urging big Canadian grocers to make it easier to buy Canadian. In a letter written to the CEOs of Loblaw, Metro, and Empire, the union says the companies should prioritize buy made in Canada products in response to the Trump tariff threat. Unifor says the grocers should also make it easier for customers to identify Canadian products with signage, stickers, and prominent shelf placement. Unifor says private label brands should also be made in Canada.
Well, the Prime Minister will head to Europe this weekend as Canada reaches out to allies also reeling from the effects of the Trump presidency.
Trudeau's office says that the 5-day trip will begin Saturday. It'll include stops in Paris and Brussels. The Prime Minister will meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, as well as his EU counterparts, to discuss security, Ukraine, and trade. Trudeau will deliver a keynote speech in Paris at a conference on artificial intelligence.
It's 5:21, sitting right at the freezing mark. This is Live at 5.
The NBA trade deadline, it's officially passed. We're taking a look at what this could mean for the Raptors as they look ahead to the rest of the season.
Welcome back. The NBA trade deadline is come and gone, and while some teams went for blockbuster moves, the Raptors made some smaller tweaks to their lineup.
TSN's basketball analyst Wes Chang joins us live in the studio with more insight on the day. Wes, we got to talk about this. Trade deadlines. You win some, you lose some. Look, we got to talk about Davion Mitchell as well as James Wiseman. School us.
Well, look, listen, at the end of the day, there's kind of a logjam right now you're seeing at the point guard position. So I think the Raptors, they're kind of in between, trying to find the players that send out but also build for the future. There are some guys on this team that they probably want to get more reps to. Davion Mitchell was one of these expiring contracts that they felt they wanted to get some draft pick compensation for moving forward. So they found a partner that was able to do that, and that's ultimately what this trade is. And so that now creates space for rookie that they drafted, Jamal Shed, who's actually looked really good, and I think they've been a little bit redundant. So this is why they made this move ultimately. Shed now gets a chance to really step up in the second half of the year.
Okay, I want to talk big picture for a moment because the Raps have obviously made a number of moves. How do you rate these moves?
You mean for the Raptors or you mean league-wide?
For the Raptors.
I think you're going to see there's kind of like discourse on both sides.
Okay.
I think people are still in between undecided. I think the main thing is you have to ask, what was available for Bruce Brown and some of the expiring contracts that they had. Everybody wants to say, oh, we should have been able to get more of this, more of that. But the reality is we don't know what these conversations are. We don't know who's available in these trades. I think when you're talking about purely talent, Brendan Ingram, the player who came back, the main player that came back, this is a former All-Star, a player who knows how to get his own buckets. And I think whether or not you're comfortable with the fit, this is a player that is talented enough to add value to the team, and what that leads to in the future remains to be seen, and you kind of take it from there.
Okay, so Wes, with the moves, the Raps also position themselves for what exactly when it comes to the draft and also money on hand?
Well, look, I think the main thing you heard so much about, like, are they tanking? Are they not tanking this year? And now with some of these moves, they kind of look like they're once again somewhere caught in no man's land. They just simply were too good of a team to be able to lose at the level that a lot of these other teams were losing in the NBA. So they're not as bad as them, so they weren't going to get the best lottery odds for this generational draft that's coming up. But they're not out of it. They're still one of the bottom teams in the NBA, so they're kind of setting themselves up with some good assets for the future, players who are talented enough to impact winning in the future, while not being that far out of the lottery odds. So they're in a situation that's not exactly one side or the other, but if, sometimes the lottery balls, they fall their way. Hey, you never know what could happen, like it was for Atlanta. So Toronto's just kind of crossing fingers that, everything works out in their favor.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we can't let you go without talking about the big trades that everybody is chatting about. Luka Doncic, Jimmy Butler.
Yep.
Give us your thoughts.
Those two trades essentially amount to this being the craziest NBA trade deadline of all time. I mean,
all time?
I mean, look, put it this way. Look at every single person related to the NBA and anything related to basketball. You ask them, what did you think of this Doncic trade? They're like, was Shams hacked? Was that a real tweet? Was that fake? The GMs involved in this weren't even sure. Is that a real offer that we were getting here? So I think the sheer shock that you're seeing from all the individuals and stakeholders within the NBA organization, that's a big tell, showing you that this was really something that came out of nowhere, and that really is what set the precedent for all the chips that ended up falling during this trade deadline.
All right, TSN basketball analyst Wes Trent. Did I hear you say you're going to NBA All-Star Weekend?
Oh, I don't know. We said, I wish. Now you're just getting your needle in me. I love to.
We're manifesting.
Well, yes, I like that. Absolutely.
It's been such a pleasure chatting
with you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, you're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
And coming up, we're going to be back at the scene of a fatal fire in Markham. CP24 CJ Liu is going to bring us the very latest. Stay with us. A man's dead, a woman's in hospital. This after a fire broke out at a house in Markham.
And we'll take you live to East York, where a woman is in serious condition this evening after being struck by a dump truck. We'll tell you more about what happened.
And on the campaign trail, Bonnie Crombie goes after Doug Ford over Ontario's healthcare crisis, while Ford continues talking about tariffs with 3 weeks to go until Election Day.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latafat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. One person's dead and others in hospital. This is after a house fire in Markham.
Let's get the very latest from CP24's CJ Liu, who's live on the scene tonight with the tragic details. CJ.
Hi, Lena and Bakari. Fire crews are still here. They are heavily dousing the car and the garage where this huge fire started this afternoon. The damage has been done, extensive damage, and a life has been lost. We have learned that a senior man has died in this house fire. He was trapped inside. Crews tried to save him, but he did not make it. A woman was also sent to the hospital with critical injuries. This is on Pillar Rock Crescent, the northwest corner of Victoria Square and Major Mackenzie. A witness sent us video from the scene earlier that shows the car up in flames with the fire quickly spreading across the house. Take a look.
White public ready.
Inside the house. Her husband inside the house. Where is he? Is it in the room? Upstairs, downstairs? Downstairs?
You hear the man saying inside the house, and that's what firefighters were told as well. There was a woman who was able to evacuate the home because of working smoke alarms. She was seriously injured, but she notified firefighters that there was a man still trapped inside. Fire crews didn't hesitate. They quickly went inside, pulled the man out, tried to perform CPR, but unfortunately he did not survive. We are now learning that this is an elderly man. Take a listen to what the Markham fire chief had to say about what this was like today.
First in crews encountered a large volume of fire in the garage that had spread into the home. There was a resident of the home that had evacuated, been notified to the fire by a working smoke alarm. She had some critical injuries. She also reported to our crews that there was another resident of the home still inside. Crews made an aggressive interior attack, quickly located the resident, who moved him to the exterior and put him in care of York Regional Paramedic Services. Unfortunately, that resident has succumbed to the injuries and was pronounced dead at scene.
And right now, as you can see, the car is unrecognizable. You can't tell the make or model, the number of the home, you can't see either. And this is a townhouse building. So the neighbors have been evacuated. They're being told they can't return for the rest of the day. And fire crews, they did bring in a shelter bus. So some of the people who can't return to their homes are there right now, keeping warm to try to figure out where they're going to head to tonight. But Lena and Bakari, it's still very early on in the investigation right now. All we're learning is that an elderly man did die, and they believe that this started in the garage.
All right, Sija Lou in Brampton this evening. Thanks for this, Sija. Well, human remains have been found after a house fire in eastern Ontario.
The owner of the home in Bancroft is unaccounted for, but OPP say a post-mortem must still be done to identify the remains. The house was fully involved when firefighters and police arrived Tuesday evening. The fire is still under investigation. And a woman's in hospital with serious injuries after she was hit by a dump truck. This happened in East York.
CP24's Steve Ryan joins us live from the scene at Mortimer and Pape with the latest. Steve, what happened here?
Yeah, Alina and Bakari, this pedestrian struck happened at 2 p.m. this afternoon. I am on the north side of Mortimer, east of Pape. The intersection behind me here, I'll get out of the way so you can have a look, is governed by a traffic signal, as you can see. I've been told that the dump truck was traveling northbound on Pape on a green light. It went to make a right turn to go eastbound on Mortimer, and I'm told that a woman in her 40s was on the south side of Mortimer, crossing to the north side of Mortimer on the green light as well. And for reasons unknown at this time, the driver of the dump truck did not see the woman, and he struck her. And she's been rushed to hospital, where she remains in a trauma unit in life-threatening condition. So the Traffic Services reconstruction team is on scene. They will investigate this collision. And a couple of questions, right? Why didn't the driver of the dump truck see the pedestrian? Was it driver error? Was it pedestrian error? Was there something on the vehicle, mechanical malfunction on the vehicle that did not work? The reconstruction team will investigate the truck as well. Or was the driver's view obstructed, or was there some other reason as to why the driver did not see the pedestrian? That is the million-dollar question that the police will at some point in time have an answer for once they continue with this investigation. As you can see, the driver of the dump truck did remain on scene. That truck is currently being investigated by the reconstruction team. And again, the woman in her 40s is fighting for her life in life-threatening condition in hospital. Police are looking for witnesses. So if you were in this area at around 2 p.m. this afternoon, again, Mortimer and Pape, you're asked to give the police a call. I'll send it back to the desk.
All right, Steve, thanks so much for this. It's now 5:36, sitting right at the freezing mark. Let's get a check on that. Evening drive with our traffic specialist, Adjoa and Siayabwa. We started the day with a freezing drizzle advisory that has since ended. Adjoa, how are the roads?
They're dry in terms of precipitation, but very jammed in terms of vehicle traffic. So if you're making your way out, you're dealing with volume delays and quite a few issues. So we'll start with these problems happening on the 401 westbound. No access to the ramp to Port Union. This has been on the go for over an hour and a half. A vehicle ended up in the ditch, so the investigation is underway. Further west on the 401, we saw this collision westbound 401 through Yonge Street. It is the right lane and shoulder that is blocked. There are some major backups from Victoria Park. Traveling towards the Gardiner, it's very slow as you try to get out of the downtown core. Delayed start from Sherbourne, and they continue out to approaching Spadina. This situation has been here for the last little while as well. It's the left lane that is out. That is with the stall and problems to deal with on the westbound 403. This is the exit ramp. that does take you to Dundas. Center lane blocked. That is following a stall. If you're traveling on the eastbound 403 into Burlington at Waterdown Road, outside of camera view, we have a stall that is blocking a lane, and also brand new collision on Bloor and Dundas. I'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Adge. And Peel police are searching for a man who's accused of defrauding several people across Canada. It's part of a romance scam.
Yeah, investigators say there are 11 people who have reported losing a combined $275,000.
Yeah, police say that 30-year-old Chukwuka Emmanuel Williams, seen in this photo, sent victims random friend requests on social media claiming to be an active member of the military. The communication later developed in what the victims believed was a relationship. That's where he requested money from the victim, saying that it would help pay for a return trip home after deployment. Williams failed to show up to a scheduled court appearance last week and is now wanted for 23 offenses.
And Peel police are asking for help finding a missing 62-year-old vulnerable man from Mississauga.
Manuel is described as being 5'7" with an average build, brown eyes, short gray hair. He was last seen wearing a dark toque, blue or black pants, a yellow winter jacket, beige boots. He was last seen around 6 last evening near Leesgar Drive and Derry Road. He's believed to be traveling on foot, so police and his family, they are very concerned for his safety.
Well, Ontario's main party leaders were stopped in Toronto and southwestern Ontario today before two of them head north.
Okay, for more on what happened on the campaign trail, we're joined live by CP24's Lindsay Biscaya, who's in the newsroom. Lindsay, let's hear it.
Well, I mean, there's still a lot of conversations, Bakari and Lena, around healthcare, around rent, and of course, around those U.S. tariff threats. Doug Ford definitely making sure that that is front and center with his campaigning. So we'll start with the PC leader, Doug Ford. He was in Waterloo today, and his party has been pitching a lot of new plans, a transit plan that would go through the greater Golden Horseshoe, looking at easing congestion. He also pitched today in Waterloo their healthcare plan, which would really look at seeing more hospitals and medical centers built around Ontario, as well as connecting Ontarians with family doctors. Of course, we've seen a shortage in the last couple of years. Obviously, for anyone who's seeking re-election, there's a lot of questions about your track record so far. And today, the Greenbelt seemed to be cropping up a little bit when it came to Doug Ford answering questions from reporters. That was asked a couple of times, that RCMP investigation, and whether Doug Ford has actually been interviewed in that investigation yet. So that was an interesting point as well. But we also heard Doug Ford continuously talk about that threat of tariffs. We've seen him on a lot of American news networks recently talking about those tariffs and what Ontario will do to retaliate. And he once again said today that he is focused on protecting workers if those tariffs do come into place. Have a listen.
With President Trump's tariffs threatening millions of workers across Ontario, we'll do whatever it takes to protect Ontario workers and their livelihoods, their families, businesses and communities. I deeply appreciate the support of the Ontario Pipe Trades Council members, and I will work hard every single day to stand up for our women and men in the skilled trades and protect good-paying Ontario jobs.
NDP leader Marit Stiles, meanwhile, she was in Sault Ste. Marie today, really focusing in on rent and the issue of rent in this province, which has been skyrocketing. She's speaking to her about her party's plan to protect renters by doubling ODSP and also bringing in stronger rent control regulations. And Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, she was also campaigning today, starting off in Scarborough this morning, announcing her new healthcare platform before heading to Thunder Bay this afternoon. Bonnie Crombie talking about her party's plan. It's a 4-point plan to address the shortage of family doctors. And she was once again slamming Doug Ford for his track record when it comes to what is the healthcare system in Ontario now. Take a listen.
We're going to build out the Ontario Health Team Network, so you have access to more care closer to home when you need it. 3, make it easier for doctors and their teams to do their jobs. We've all heard about the administrative burden taking up 50% of their time. Let's get rid of fax machines at long last and implement a centralized referral system and ensure that they have the right staff and the support that they need to offer more evening and weekend care.
And lastly, Green Party leader Mike Schreiner was in Guelph before going to Hamilton. He kicked off his party's plan to, quote, end legislative poverty by doubling ODSP and Ontario works rights and also ensuring proper guidelines between tenants and landlords. So another busy day, Lena and Bakari. Again, it's only 3 weeks away now until the election, exactly 3 weeks from today. And many polls showing Doug Ford very much has the lead in terms of who people would vote for if that election were held today. So 3 weeks, that's a long time in politics. A lot can change, a lot can happen. And we'll have to wait and see what does happen. Back to you.
Okay, Lindsay Biscaya, live in our newsroom tonight. Thanks so much for this, Lindsay. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
A prominent Toronto police officer is fighting a decision that will see her demoted. CP24's Beatrice Vaisman takes a closer look at the appeal that's now being filed. That's next. A senior Toronto police officer demoted for trying to intervene in her nephew's collision investigation is appealing the ruling.
CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us live with these latest developments. Beatrice.
Lena Bakari, this is a story that's now been unfolding since May 1st, 2022. That's when Inspector Joyce Schertzer's nephew was involved in a single vehicle collision, slamming into a city-owned utility pole on Lakeshore Boulevard West. Her case came before the police tribunal, and last month she was actually sentenced to 9 months probation on 2 counts of misconduct. This is a probation that essentially now is on hold until the tribunal, until the commission hears this appeal. As for the reason behind this appeal, there's actually 67 different reasons given by Schertzer's lawyer as to why they believe that this sentence of the 9 months of demotion to staff sergeant is unfair. Ultimately, they say the senior officer who is the hearings officer, retired OPP superintendent, alleged that Schertzer they allege that she engaged in speculation, ignoring relevant testimony, evidence, and made unreasonable findings in her decision. That's the allegation from Schertzer's lawyer towards the hearings officer. Back on May 1st, 2022, when this happened, Schertzer, who was the inspector over at 11 Division, received a call from her daughter, who's also a police officer, by the way, letting her know that her nephew had crashed his pickup truck. The tribunal heard that Schertzer actually arranged for an officer from her division to be dispatched to 14 Division where the crash occurred, and that Schertzer also attended the scene. The decision saying that Schertzer circumvented the usual priority system to the benefit of her family because she went there in person along with one of her subordinates from her division. In a statement in this appeal that's been filed, Schertzer's lawyer simply saying the hearing officer erred in her treatment of public interest by including but not limited to making unreasonable findings, making findings without evidence, engaging in speculation, and engaging in hyperbole. The hearing officer in her decision also suggested that Schertzer, as a senior officer, did not act in the way that a senior officer should, and that she brought some almost shame on the Toronto Police Service. That's something that is refuted in this appeal as well. Schertzer has been on the service for decades now. She's best known for her time as part of Toronto Police's homicide squad. So now her demotion to staff sergeant is on hold pending this appeal. Back to you.
All right, Beatrice, thanks so much for this. It is now 5:47, sitting right at the freezing mark. You're watching Live at 5.
Securing affordable housing units here. Deal announced by the city today with the help of the federal government. That's next.
The city and federal government have teamed up to preserve affordable homes for Toronto's artists.
The city has reached an agreement to secure the future of Artscape's facilities. The nonprofit provides housing and studio spaces for members of the arts community. Artscape entered receivership proceedings back in 2023, but tenants will be able to stay in their homes thanks to the deal, which was reached with help from Ottawa.
Arts and culture contributed $8.4 billion to Toronto's economy. $8.4 billion. Imagine that. Yeah. More than that, art is powerful. It gets us out of our couch, connect us in the theater, concert hall, and galleries, make us feel less lonely, and make us really feel we belong in this city.
Arts and culture contributes a huge amount to our economy. And that's why it's important for us to also take care of artists and arts and culture workers. And one thing we know above all is that they need affordable places to live and affordable places to create.
It's so important to provide Canadian artists with a space to showcase their unique works. And I will say to you that I've been blessed to be a federal politician here for almost 10 years. The number one issue for all the artistic and cultural organizations in this community has been, please protect our existing cultural spaces. Please continue to allow us to have these spaces in our city so that we could live, so that we could actually perform, so that we could actually practice our craft.
And Mayor Olivia Chow made the announcement at the Propeller Art Gallery near Queen and Dufferin this morning. It is one of the sites that'll be protected under this plan. The city says the gallery will receive funding to buy back its exhibition space and acquire 20 affordable housing units.
A new report from Statistics Canada shows Nova Scotia had the highest rate of poverty among the provinces in 2022. Manitoba had the highest rate of deep poverty.
The report says 12.5% of Nova Scotians live below the poverty line in 2022. That compares with a Canadian average of 9.9%. BC had the second highest poverty rate at 12.2%, followed by Manitoba, where 11.9% of residents lived in poverty and 6.9% lived in deep poverty. StatsCan defines poverty as someone who can't afford the cost of a basket of goods and services that represent a basic standard of living. 1 in 5 people who immigrated to Canada between 2017 and 2022 lived in poverty, with more than half of them in deep poverty.
Well, Canada Post is cutting dozens of jobs as part of a corporate restructuring plan.
In a statement to CTV News, the Crown Corporation says it has laid off 50 employees who were in management positions. Canada Post says about half of the impacted employees were in Ottawa and others were in Toronto and all over the country. An official says the cuts are in response to significant financial and operational challenges. This comes after 20% of senior roles were cut in January and the lengthy postal worker strike during the holiday season.
A utility company in California says that its equipment likely sparked one of the wildfires in Los Angeles last month.
The Hearst fire did not cause any deaths or destroy any buildings, unlike 2 other massive fires that broke out in the area on the same day. The admission by Southern California Edison over its likely role in the Hearst fire came in a required filing with state utility regulators. Now, in a second filing, the utility said it is looking into whether an idle transmission line sparked the deadly Eaton fire. But it also maintains there's no evidence that its equipment was responsible for starting that blaze.
And last month was the hottest January on record, stunning climate scientists who expected cooler La Nina conditions.
Yeah, the Copernicus Climate Change Service said January was 1.75 degrees Celsius hotter than pre-industrial times, extending a run of historic highs in 2023 and 2024. Scientists warn that every fraction of a degree of warming increases the intensity and frequency of extreme weather events like heat waves, heavy rainfall, and droughts. It's the first time temperatures recorded during a La Nina period were above those of a preceding El Nino. Scientists say the current period is likely the warmest the Earth has been for the last 125,000 years.
It's 5:55, holding at 0. This is Live at 5.
Suddenly I'm in the cockpit. Suddenly I've got my wings. Suddenly
Come From Away, marking a milestone while highlighting the show's important message all these years later. That story is next.
Come From Away is celebrating their 1,000th performance in Toronto.
Suddenly I'm in the cockpit. Suddenly I've got my...
Sounding good. The original Canadian production that's gone on to win multiple awards gave its 1,000th performance at the historic Royal Alexandra Theatre last week. Kaylin Stanek joined CP24 earlier today and says the show's message is more important now than ever.
especially in the last week or two. I mean, I always think about this, but the last week or two, I have been thinking and telling people, if you haven't seen the show, or even if you have, this is the time to see the show. With everything that's going on, it's been a little disheartening. Like, I have to admit, I've been a little disheartened with the world. And I'm so grateful that I get to tell this story 8 times a week to remind me that there is love, there is joy, there is compassion, there is community in this world, and we can all lean into that and celebrate that it is also because we're Canadian.
I love that.
Come From Away is currently running in Toronto until at least April 6th.
You're watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Thanks for watching.
CTV News at 6 is next.